Hi guys! I thought I would bring you guys along on a little DIY journey that I just took. Basically, long story short, I had this really pretty white rug that was kind of a Turkish inspired rug. I think it was actually Magnolia brand. I got it at Bed Bath & Beyond. It was pretty expensive, and I was proud of myself for buying a nice rug. Well, maybe a month after I bought it, I spilled literally an entire mug of hot chocolate on it and completely ruined it. There was no turning back. Even after trying to hide that portion under the couch, I spilled a little bit of water on it, and it made the dye that was in the very faint print in it, which you'll see here in a second, it made it run. So it was just bad all the way around. I asked Bed Bath & Beyond if they would replace it, and they of course said yes. However, they didn't have the same rug. I was kind of leery of buying the same rug again after all the problems I had with it. And I didn't like any of the rugs that they had in stock. So I ended up ordering another rug and hid that rug away in my office. I still used it, but nobody goes in my office but me, so I didn't really care. Well, I discovered that I could overdye it and completely turn it into an entirely new creation. So let me take you along on my DIY journey and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear if you guys try this out too. All right, so here is the poor, forlorn little rug. Check out that huge stain right there. That is from the aforementioned cup of hot chocolate. That was the starting point of the whole downfall of this. Here's a little spot just from spilling a little bit of water. Over here you can see there's another stain from spilling water. You can see how the dye kind of bled. Just all over, little spots just from water. Only that one spot really was from hot chocolate, and this poor rug just fell apart. So the first step in this process was as easy as vacuuming. All I did was vacuum the rug. I wanted to be sure to get all the extra dirt and grime out so I could be sure that the dye would set evenly whenever I spray the rug. So yeah, I basically just gave it a really good vacuum and went from there. So for inspiration, I found a picture of a rug that's overdyed online, just to have something to base my colors off of. Alright, so the supplies you need for this will be 3 spray bottles. I just got these cheap, I think they're like $1.50 at Walmart. Spray bottles, and then I got liquid Rit dye, so I'm gonna do navy blue, royal blue, and emerald green. I'm gonna try to kind of start, dark on the outside edges, and then royal blue in from that, and then emerald kind of near the middle. And then definitely want some hand saver gloves, because you will dye the crap out of your hands if you don't. So I'm gonna use a sponge that I'm about to throw away anyway. I'm going to use this to rub in the dye. So I'm just going to rinse it out really good, get it nice and clean, and then we'll use it to kind of move the dye around once we spray it. Okay, first things first, put on those beautiful gloves. You do not want blue hands, and I promise you, you will get them if you do not wear the gloves. You can go ahead and open up your spray bottle. I set mine down in the sink while I got the dye ready. I like to shake up this liquid dye because sometimes the dye can settle at the bottom and separate a little bit. I started with navy. I filled the bottle a little bit more than 1/4 of the way up with the dye. You can kind of use your own discretion on this, but I started small rather than large because I was a little nervous. Once you do that, go ahead and put the lid back on your dye so you don't spill it, and then fill the rest of the bottle with water. Once the bottle's filled, just put the lid back on and give it a good shake. Make sure you have the lid on all the way, because if you don't, you're going to have a big, giant mess on your hands. Shake it up really good to make sure it's mixed. And there you have it. There's your first color. Next up, I did the royal blue, and I did everything exactly the same as I did the first time around. Last but certainly not least, I did the emerald green. Once again, I did it exactly the same proportions, same amount of shaking, everything exactly the same as the first two. Now here's a really important step. Get your Sharpie and mark each of the bottles, because as you can see, all of these colors look almost identical when they're in dye form. So I marked mine with a B for blue, an N for navy, and a G for green. Now all you have to do is roll up your rug and get it outside into the grass. This is the fun part, the part we've all been waiting for. Now I just unrolled the rug in the grass and kept it far away from our patio because this will definitely stain your concrete. So I start again with my gloves and I take the navy dye and spray around the edges first. I make sure to get in really good where the fringe is at the end, and then you'll see that I take that sponge that we talked about at the beginning and kind of push the dye into the fringe. So here's what it looks like after your first pass. I did navy at the very edge, and then I did a little bit of that royal blue right above it. And here's a closer look of how you do this. So I took the navy again and I sprayed it right along the edge, and it's kind of interesting how this dye lands. It kind of looks like nothing's happening for a minute, and then after it sits for a minute it starts to get darker, I guess because it's starting to soak into the fibers of the rug. And then I took royal blue and I went over the navy blue because it makes it more saturated, and then I went right above the navy blue to make it a little bit bright above that dark navy line. Now I went through with my green dye and went right above the royal blue and actually ended up going over everything. I went over the navy, the royal, and some of the white, just to kind of blend all the colors together. Here's a close-up of how I ended up using the sponge. I ended up not using it on the main part of the rug, I just used it on the fringe. It helped kind of mix in the dye into the fringe so there weren't any weird white gaps. And this is just the first pass. It's gonna get much darker after this here in just a second. From this point on, I basically do the same thing over and over and over again. I did navy right along the edge, I did royal blue on top of the navy as well as right above it, and then I took the green and put it over the navy, the royal, and right above the royal. I basically avoid the center of the rug. I didn't really spray anything directly on there. It all just kind of bled towards the center eventually and came out with this really cool ombre effect. So here's about a halfway check-in. Almost there. It's kind of maybe hard to see out here in this light, but it's turning out really pretty. Really liking it. After my midway check-in, I went around the entire rug one more time and did a second layer of dye. I got a little bit closer to the middle and you can see the color starts to get a lot darker. Here's a better view of what the rug looked like after the second round of dye. I let it sit outside for about 2 hours after this and let the dye really soak in and get deep into the fibers so that I could be sure that whenever I rinse it off with the hose here in a minute, it didn't just instantly rinse off all of the dye. So at a minimum, I would leave it outside for 2 hours and let it dry in the sunshine. Just make sure it's not gonna rain because it'll mess up the whole thing for you. I may have warned you about blue hands, but you can also dye your feet blue. Check out these pretty things. Thankfully, they did wash off a little bit with soap and water. And here's my sweet Karen, who escaped during the filming of this project. Now all that you have to do is rinse out your rug with your garden hose. I would caution you from getting too strong with the stream of water because it can damage your rug. It looks like after rinsing out, it gets a lot more dimension to it once you rinse it. It's pretty cool. Now I just hung it over my patio set, which is metal, and let it drip dry overnight. Once the rug had dried overnight, I brought it back inside and gave it a really good vacuum. After this, I went around the whole rug again and did the same exact process to get the color more saturated. I let the rug dry for 2 more hours, rinsed it out again, let it dry overnight, and then brought it in to do one last vacuum. And here you have it. Here's the finished product. It's super saturated and I'm definitely loving the color it came out to be. I'm really excited to put this in a more prominent place in our home, rather than hiding it in my office all alone to be forgotten forever. So there you have it. My trash to treasure transformation. I had a ton of fun doing this project. It took a little longer than I had anticipated. It probably took me a total of, I don't know, 4 days by the time you put all the layers of dye and rinsing and drying and vacuuming. It probably takes about a good 4 days to get the project done. But it was super easy, really cheap. I think all the supplies together cost me like $12. I did go ahead and buy a rug pad. I have it right here. It was $15 at Goodwill. Oh, sorry, not Goodwill, Big Lots. So I went ahead and bought this just because we have light, like blonde wood floors, and I would hate for blue dye to somehow seep into the floor eventually because it has direct contact. So I do want to keep a barrier, and that's something I would definitely suggest that you do as well if you do this project, just to protect yourself, because I don't want anybody blaming me if your rug dyes your floor. And I don't want to get this floor dyed because we're renters and we would be in deep doo-doo. Anyway, let me know if you end up trying this project. I would love a little bit of feedback in the comments below if you have a second to shoot me a quick message. I'd love to know what you think. Anyway, had a ton of fun doing this project and can't wait to hear if you guys try it. Thanks.